Hey, welcome back to our study this week, looking at Proverbs 1:7. Today we're talking about how the fool in this passage despises all four. All four what? They despise wisdom, knowledge, instruction, and they despise God himself. So fools hate knowledge. They say they want to know, but they really short-circuit their ability to gain knowledge. Like, I want to know all these things, scientists studying all this kind of stuff, and all we want to know, we want to figure all these things out. But do you really? Do you really? Because if you wanted to, wouldn't you start? You need to start with God first. And that's what the Bible says. That's what God says. Start with me first. I'm like, no. We don't need you. We can figure all these things out on our own. And then they go ahead and try to do it. God says, that's a fool's errand, right? That's a fool's goal. You just destroy your ability to actually gain knowledge. You're going to mess the facts up. You're not even going to get the facts right. Like, it's just the facts, and you're going to get those wrong because you don't understand the very first fact, that God exists and that he is real and that he has shown you that he exists. And so because what you're really doing is taking the very first, the foundational fact, and then suppressing that truth with a lie. So everything you know has begun with lies. It begins with a lie. So your whole foundation of all the knowledge, all the facts you're gathering in, are all based on one giant lie. And that's where the problem begins. Now, fools also hate wisdom. Since they can't obtain true knowledge, they can't get wisdom. I mean, go back to Romans 1 with me. If you go back to Romans chapter 1, that's what Paul talks about in this passage. This passage is so applicable to everything, especially when you're talking about people and what they're doing. If you look at Romans chapter 1, and what we want to look at down in 22, verse 22 through 23, it says, claiming to be wise, they became fools. So they claim to be wise, but really they despise wisdom. And so they became fools, and they exchanged the glory of God for all these other things. So instead of worshiping God, they worship creation. They worship Mother Nature. They venerate Mother Nature, Mother Earth, and all these other things. But really, they hate wisdom because they hate God. So they can't obtain the true knowledge. They can't figure out how these things work together or why they're not studying the right things either. Because if they were studying the right things, because they don't believe in God. So the idea of evolution. I was just watching a podcast the other day where they're talking about these cavefish and how these cavefish are blind and they don't have any pigment in there because they've been in the cave for generations. But then they pull them out, and it's not even within the next generation. It is the ones that they pull out start producing pigment again in their gills or in their scales. They begin to have pigment again, and there's activity happening in the optic nerves that are been long dormant over generations. That's in the ones they just pull out. It's not just the ones it's not even successive generations. So evolutionists are it takes millions and millions of years for all these changes to happen. And these creation people are coming out and saying, well, guess what? These changes are happening right before our eyes in the animal that we just pulled out of the darkness. It doesn't take millions of years. It didn't take millions of years for them to lose their sight and to go pigmentless. It took maybe just a couple generations and they didn't have any eyes anymore. That's how fast God made these things change. So you don't need millions of years to understand these changes and the speciation and all this kind of stuff. It happens super quick. Maybe within a couple generations, and you already got changes. You just need the right conditions, and we can affect that. So that's where the evolutionary people would be so much further along if they just began with God. If they gave all that money and said, hey, you know what, you're right, God does exist. He did create everything. Let's all begin with that. We'll take all the money that we have and start with that starting point. And now we'll do studies and experiments based on that fact that we know that God exists and that he created all things. And he did so in a way that brought about all this. And so we should be able to study that. Man, if the creation scientists had the budget that these evolutionary people did, we would know so much more already. But we're hamstringed because They're wasting all their money on studying things that just don't matter or don't make any sense because God created everything. So, I mean, in the field of medicine and stuff like that, how much further would we be along if we just started, yeah, God created everything. Okay, yeah, boom, let's go from there. That's where wisdom comes from. But fools hate wisdom. And fools hate instruction. I mean, if you look at Romans 1:32, Romans 1:32 says, though they know God's righteous decree that those who practice such things, talking about all the sin that in the rest of the verses up above, those that practice such things deserve to die. They not only do them, but give approval of those who practice them. So they don't want instruction. They don't want to be told what to do, because they know that, the fact is that they know that what they're doing is evil and wrong. They know that. That's what the Bible tells us right here. They know God's righteous decree that those who practice such evil things, what's up above? Homosexuality, dishonoring God and dishonoring their bodies that God has given to them, using what they have, trading the truth of God for a lie. They were worshiping the created things instead of God himself. Those people that do those kinds of things, they know that they're wrong. He talks about unrighteousness, evil, covetousness, malice, envy, murder, strife, deceit, maliciousness, gossiping, slandering, hating God, insolent people, haughty, the prideful people, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, foolish, faithless, heartless, ruthless. All these people that do all these things, they know that what they're doing is wrong. Ultimately, they know that. And they know that they should die because of those things. They know that. They don't want that. They would, but then they, not only do they know that, not only do they do the things, but then they give approval to everyone else to do the same things that they're doing. They want everyone else to join them and to approve of what they're doing. Man, that is our culture to a T, right? Our culture's on this on hyperdrive. They're not ashamed of it right now. And maybe that's the church's fault, because we're not out there saying, this is shameful what you're doing. You should be ashamed of this. You should feel bad, because God has already told you, you know this. You know that you're ashamed of this. But you're trying to get everyone else to do it, and you're approving them, even though you know you're going to die because of this. You're going to spend eternity in hell because of this. You know that. But you're choosing to hate instruction. And then finally, fools hate the Lord. Again, Romans 1:29-31. That's what it says. They are haters of God. Ultimately, they do all these horrible things. They're haters of God. So that's where we'll end for today. Come back tomorrow and we'll look at the conclusion of our study.